Those effing C words. Change and confidence, child. 2 words that are so scary they may as well be curse words. Let's talk about it. On this podcast, we'll share our stories about hardship and starting over, making professional pivots, ending relationships and friendships, and having the confidence to navigate change. These are real stories and real people from my one-on-one coaching sessions and interviews that will keep us inspired or remind us that things could be worse. So what you hear are the truths, traumas, and testimonies that push us to become the solution instead of just waiting for one. I'm Marcia Cork, the Change Coach, and this is Ooh, Those Effing C Words. Happy Friday, MCs. I'm Marcia Cork. Welcome back to another episode of Ooh, Those Effing C Words. Today, I am joined by my friend, Natisha Willis. Natisha is a DEI practitioner and a life and wellness coach. She and I met back earlier this year. We were chosen by Brown Ambition podcast host Mandi Woodruff-Santos for her inaugural career coaching cohort. It's called the Mandi MoneyMakers. So Natisha and I have been getting acquainted for the past several months. We've been meeting and chatting since earlier in the year, and I'm always so intrigued by her stories and her background. And one of those things, in 2018, Natisha made a move that most of us only fantasize about. She left the US and moved to Mexico for a simpler, more gratifying life in Playa del Carmen. So today she joins me to talk about living and working as an expat and how it's improved her quality of life across the board. So we're talking mental, emotional, and financial wellness. She's going to share her story and we'll discuss some cultural differences in things like work styles and priorities as we both observe them in the DEI space. And later we'll hear commentary from 2 additional guests, my cousin, Ashley Cottrell, and my friend, Ayoka Blandford, who both made similar moves to Puerto Rico and to Costa Rica, respectively. And I'll have them all share some tips for anyone who's considering making that kind of move, that kind of change, instead of just dreaming about it. So here we go, Natisha. Let's finally get this conversation on the record. How are you, lady?
I'm doing amazing. How are you?
I am amazing, too. I love those glasses.
Thank you. I get so many compliments. Who knew? These throwbacks to the 80s would get so many compliments. I love these glasses.
Just one of the things you picked up along your travel?
I think so. Well, I ordered them. I saw an Instagram ad. Okay. I ordered them one time when I knew I was going back to Chicago. So I ordered them and made sure they were waiting for me. Gotcha. And then I went back and got a subscription, a prescription, a pair with prescription.
I was going to say, not a subscription to glasses. You got glasses coming every month?
No, prescription. Wrong prescription.
Got you. Well, listen, I want you to just go ahead and set the scene. Maybe with setting the scene with 2018, and because that's when you made the move, right? So what was that moment? What was the incident that made you decide, okay, I'm getting out of here, I'm moving to Mexico?
Okay, well, to be fair, right, this journey did not start in 2018. It actually started in 2008, the very first time I ever went abroad. And the very first time I ever went abroad was in the dead of winter. I'm originally from Chicago. And so winters in Chicago, it's so cold, it hurts outside.
Yeah. That's what I hear. That's why I haven't stepped up there yet.
And so I went to Nigeria with my college roommate for her wedding. And when I got there, they had drivers. This was my first time out the country. They had drivers waiting for us. Everywhere we went, there was a driver to take us. She had a housekeeper. She had someone cooking and cleaning. And I just couldn't believe that somebody I knew, who we were broke together in community college, transferred to the same 4-year, broke together again. I got to put emphasis on that broke part. Had drivers where she was from. And I mentioned that it was
And I've
summertime.
heard that before. That it's a completely different lifestyle. We
Complete.
have my husband and I have a friend who is a diplomat in Niger, and he lives like a king over there.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And what I know now that I didn't know then is a lot of people come to the States, earn dollars and then send money back home and build homes and put all kinds of things into place for them. And their family. So, that experience being in the motherland and it's 85, 90 degrees, while folks are freezing on the other side of the world, being not waited on hand and foot, but definitely catered to.
Okay.
It was a much different experience.
Yeah.
And that moment made me feel like, first of all, this life is available. Okay. To somebody who looks like me.
Right.
Second, this is
absolutely where everybody looks like me.
Oh, everybody. It never even. Yeah, I was just like, this is the life I'm supposed to have, And so from that moment forward, every move I made, and I made several, was really in the direction toward, all right, how can I get to live abroad, right?
Okay.
So from 2008, in 2008, social media was just getting its legs. We didn't have a lot of Facebook groups. I don't even think groups existed yet, but there weren't a lot of groups of people who were living abroad that I felt like I could align with, right? Okay. So at that time, the only people I knew who lived and worked abroad taught English, taught math, or did Peace Corps. And I didn't want to do any of those things. And so, I just said, all right, I'm going to find a way. I don't know what is going to be or how it's going to come, but I'm going to find a way. And in the meantime, I'm going to go make sure I use this passport at least once a year. And so that's what I did from 2008, 2013 or so. I got the wherewithal that I was going to move to Belize. And so that was my first attempt at moving abroad.
This is 2013?
2013.
Okay.
I lasted like 2 months before I ran out of money. I was not able to secure employment in Belize, nor was I didn't necessarily understand how to build a brand or, build a business. Like, in my mind, the final straw was when I met a guy who told me, he would pay me $25 an hour to do some consulting. And, a month later, by the time the contracts were all written out, he basically wanted to offer me the equivalent of $5 an hour. And so in my mind, I'm like, I have a master's degree. I can, at the very least, I can go back to the States and make $8 an hour working at McDonald's.
So was that here or was that in Belize?
That was in Belize.
This person. Oh, okay. So you moved to Belize just on savings, a wing and a prayer.
Yeah, because it wasn't exactly, savings. I had sold my car. And so that was the money I had. And in my mind, I have a master's degree. I've gone to massage school. I have a certified massage therapist. In my mind, I should be able to make something happen. I'm from Chicago. So yeah, I went there on a wing and a prayer and, a little bit of a plan-ish. I had connected with the nonprofit there and we'd made an arrangement that they would provide room and board. And I would provide consulting. When I got there, the deal changed. They didn't want to provide room and board so much. They
so wanted. Where were you staying?
So.
The pause.
Right. So I did stay there for a little while, right? Before I realized, I'm going to run out of all my money if I'm spending money here. Because that wasn't part of the plan.
Because they weren't covering room and board as they told you they would.
Exactly. Okay. And so I had set up two things, right? So I had that opportunity and I had actually met someone when I was in Chicago, who we were doing some off-grid stuff like chopping wood or something, and I met someone. I told her what I'd heard in my spirit. I was supposed to study indigenous healing traditions, and I was going to Belize because I heard about the Mayan abdominal massage, and I was going to study this and so on and so forth. And she said, "Oh, I'm from Belize. Like, what are the odds?" And she called her brother, and her brother told me, "Oh, just bring a swimming suit. You'll be fine." And so when I got to Belize, so I had two. I had a backup plan.
Okay.
When I got there, her brother and his wife was from Guatemala, and they had a gift shop. And so in Belize, well, I think in most countries outside of the US, your business is usually also where you live. So there was a gift shop in the front of the house, and we slept in the back. And so I basically slept in the back of a gift shop for the rest of the time that I was there. But things happen, of course, I started at the nonprofit. When I found that was kind of falling apart, I called the brother. And then someone who I had met years before just happened to be in Belize. And she connected me. She was like south of the country. So, Belize back then used retired school buses, like yellow school buses. So I rode the school bus. I was all throughout the country. So I stayed south, which is called PG, Punta Gorda. And so I lived in Punta Gorda for a little while as well. So yeah,
I traveled all a span of how long?
2 months. Maybe 3, but I don't think it was that many. Because I definitely was looking at the cash like, all right, I got these $100 bills. Like once.
This is very much Lifetime movie backpacking.
It was very exciting. I can't believe it. My life. But yeah, so I ran out of money. My limit was when I get to my last $400, it's time to go, because I know that I can get at least a one-way ticket back to the States. Okay. And so that's what happened. I made it down to $400. I called a girlfriend, she bought my ticket. I had the money in hand when I got to her, and that year, I told myself that I would spend living out of my backpack while I studied these indigenous healing traditions. Okay. And so that's what I did. I studied herbalism. I studied yoga, meditation, mindfulness. And at the end of that year, I was like, all right, I need a job because I want to figure out how I can go abroad and stay abroad. But I'm spending hours studying internet marketing, right? Because that's when I basically got turned on to life coaching. But I'm spending hours trying to understand how to piece this idea of an online business together. And it's not working. I need a job. I need to invest in a training or coach or somebody. And, this little money I have make working, 10 hours a week at Bed Bath & Beyond ain't cutting it. So, I found another job in my career path field at the time, which was an academic advisor at an acupuncture school. And my students were getting degrees in yoga and herbalism and the very things that I spent that year studying. And so I got that job in 2014. And so from 2014 to 2018, I invested in coaches and masterminds and really trying to get everything up and running. And so, like the coaches tell you, set your date, but it's not magic. I set my date and I was not ready. By the time my date came around, I was actually...
Your date was what?
September 30th, 2017.
Okay. So you started grinding, I'll say, in 2014, preparing for this move back abroad somewhere by 2017.
Somewhere, I didn't know where.
Okay.
But I just knew that I was, I needed to set the date so I could just close this chapter. Yeah. And the date came and went. I wasn't ready. My business was not generating enough income where I felt comfortable.
Okay. Because you want a work from anywhere type of situation. You want to be able to make money here in the States, but live comfortably abroad.
Right. At that time, that's what, these were the options, right? You teach English or math, you do Peace Corps, or you start a business. Gotcha. So that was I was like, okay, so I need an online business. I need something that I can do online. So I can be location independent. and I can be wherever I want to be.
Okay.
Yep, the date came and went. I was not ready. So instead I focused on what I could change. I'm like, all right, the business may not be where I need it to be, but let me start getting ready. Let me get all this other stuff ready. So I hired a stylist. I started, getting a capsule wardrobe together, throwing away most of my clothes, making
Okay.
sure, all the clothing I owned could fit in a single suitcase. I started preparing everything else.
Yeah.
And literally in like 90 days, I was laid off from my job. And so I took that as, oh, snap, like you are free to roam the cabin. You're
Okay.
you're
Okay.
able to do this now. And so, February 2nd, 2018. And I something that week told me, I was like, I'm about to get laid off. Like I knew it in my spirit that I was about to be laid off. And
so it's a blessing in disguise.
I knew it was coming.
Okay.
And so as soon as it happened, I was just like, it was like the chains had just released me, because in my mind, I've been investing all this time in building a business at the same time while I'm working full time. If the job is out of the way, I can focus on the business. And at the very least, 6 months of unemployment, I know I can go somewhere. I can take a graduate course. I can get a student loan, like use the refund check. Like I know that I can stay abroad for at least 18 months based on, the things that I have acquired in terms of knowledge.
Okay.
And
so you're looking at that as you don't have any constraints anymore. Now you don't have the job holding you back. Now you're going to have unemployment coming in. You think you'll be able to live off that unemployment.
Yep.
And now you have the time, the freedom, and the flexibility to make that move.
Okay.
So this is 2018.
2018. And
All
so
right.
I'd been in the travel community, the Black travel groups for years at that point. And I heard about several different places. Bali, Thailand, and Mexico. Like those were the three on my list. And so Bali and Thailand were like great, but I started thinking about what else do I want besides to just be abroad, and I started thinking about how will my being abroad impact the people who know me, right? And so I started thinking about the fact that, all right, in order for me to like really live and pursue my destiny, I need this living abroad to play into, what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. Yeah. So I started thinking about the fact that, all right, so I know that I want to serve and work with Black women in America. If that's the case, then I need to live somewhere where they can get to. I know that most Black women in America who work a job full time are not going to spend, 2 days to get over to East Asia, then 2 days for the jet lag to wear off. It's just not going to be enjoyable. So Mexico seems the best opportunity. In addition, I'd taken Spanish in high school and in college, nowhere near fluent, but at least I was familiar with the language. I also thought about how if I needed to get back to the States, I was relatively close. The pros began to, show up.
Yeah, and that makes sense. So a few of the places you mentioned, you said Thailand.
Yep.
What was the other one? Belize?
Bali.
Okay, because you've already done Belize.
Yeah.
You're probably not doing Belize again at that point.
Yep. I'm like, okay, I did it. I know it.
And I have, and then Mexico, and that makes sense. I have this list. I'll share it in a bit, but it's the top 10 places that Blacks typically move when they decide they want to move abroad. In Mexico, I want to say that area you're in, Playa del Carmen, is number 11 on blacknoir.com's ranking order. And like you were saying, it makes sense in terms of proximity, the amount of time it takes to travel there, the affordability. It's a popular destination for things like music festivals, for where it's located. We're gonna see people that look like us. It's close in proximity to Cuba, close to the Caribbean islands, which will explain.
I didn't even know all that.
Yeah. So and that makes sense. So it's explaining the indigenous peoples and populations that will be there, so that we as Black Americans can feel comfortable there. So that area, Playa del Carmen, Tulum, both along that Yucatan Peninsula, that area makes sense for a lot of people who decide to travel abroad. or move abroad?
It has definitely been the perfect place for
Okay.
starting this journey.
All right. So so tell me about, and this is probably a good point to bring the other guests in as well, because I want to hear about the logistics. I think people who have already played around with the idea of moving just have that kind of spirit. Like you said, this was in the works 10 years before you actually made the move. I'm going to bring my cousin in shortly, but for people like that, it's already in you. I don't think it takes much convincing. It just takes planning and getting the wheels in motion. So that's what I want to hear. The logistics, the things like telling your friends and family, the things like you said, selling off your furniture, doing this before you even make the move. Like that part just is mind blowing. So let me bring them in.
Okay.
Ashley Cottrell and Ayoka Blandford are going to join us for the conversation. All right. Hello, ladies.
Hey, y'all.
Hello.
Thank you for joining me. So you guys have been listening into this conversation. So I want to hear from all of you. Like what how does that happen? How do you make up your mind to make such a move and start preparing the people in your lives that you're about to make this drastic change in your life? I'll start with you, Ashley. Go ahead.
Okay.
Because I get to get some insight into the process now. By the time I heard about it, you were already selling things off and telling the family that you were leaving. So share with us your process, everything that was going on in that mind of yours when you decided to make this move.
So similarly, I think that I was at a stage. I would say I was at a stage in my life. I was 25 at the time. Quarter life crisis, I guess they say.
Not quarter life crisis.
But had my degree, was working, and just didn't feel fulfilled, and considered moving, and just didn't know where I wanted to move. And I had formerly lived in DC for my internship. It was way more expensive up, in DC than it is in Virginia or Southern Virginia. And then took a trip. I think I went on a cruise that year before with some friends, and we went to the island on a cruise. I think it was Cayman Islands. And so just experienced that and was like, you know what, I think I want to live in an island type of area, eventually.
Okay.
And,
you said the Cayman Islands?
Cayman Islands. It was on a cruise.
Okay.
And so the year that I finally decided to move, that following year when I was 25, like I said, and I had taken Spanish as a second language anyway, so I'd already been proficient in Spanish. And decided to visit Puerto Rico on a whim, on vacation by myself, just to step outside of my comfort zone.
Which is another thing that most people don't do.
Just
Go ahead.
trying to get away from the corporate America life. That was the stress I was trying to get away from.
Yeah.
And fell in love with the island, fell in love with the culture. Saw that there were Afro-Latinos in Puerto Rico. Oh, they actually don't all look like Jennifer Lopez, and so, was just enjoyed that, and so made the decision. It just felt like home. And so when I went back to Virginia, I was just like, once my lease ends, I'm gonna just pack it up and move. And I did talk to a few people that I had met along the way, and saw on Instagram too, and message like, "Hey, I saw that you used to live here or moved here," and they just was on that, and pretty much kind of they had the same mindset. They just wanted to experience a different lifestyle. Get away from the hustle and bustle of the United States and everything, and that's what my mindset was. I just wanted to leave the quick, fast corporate America, money type of mindset, and just live somewhere where that's not all about that. And
living in DC will change your mind for sure. That's one thing. You know what I'm hearing here before I even move on to Ayoka, and I'll have you chime in on that as well. But it sounds like it helped. Social media helped because yes, you guys both had this longing, but up until then, it didn't look like you had very many examples of people making that kind of move. But then all of a sudden, you've got social media, you've got these groups on Facebook, you've got these groups on Instagram, and now you're starting to see people actually make that move. What about for you, Ayoka? What was the driving force, or the thing that told you this was possible? Wait a minute. Before you listen, do you guys hear
I
all these
think
birds chirping in the background? It's like the perfect what soundtrack to this conversation.
they're joining the conversation.
Right.
I think for me, it was quality of life for my family. That was the driving factor for me. And so, well, if you know my personality, I didn't have to see anybody do it.
Okay.
I was going to do it anyway. And so it was really quality of life. I have 2 children. I was a single mom for a long time. My daughter is grown. Well, she graduated college and everything. She's
Okay.
technically grown. And then I have a son. He's 14 now, but when we first started planning, I guess he was about 9. And I knew I had done it in DC. We were in DC. I had raised one in DC all the way, and I said, I don't want to do this again with him. I mean, he was already 9, but it was, when I say quality of life, I mean a few things. It was, we would get up at the crack of dawn. I get him or them to school. I work all day, then I'm rushing to go pick him up. He's in aftercare and has been in aftercare for 3 hours.
Yep.
Sometimes I would pick her up or she would make her way home. And by the time we got home, I had to cook, look over homework. We would maybe have a half an hour of just connecting before it was bath and ready for bed.
Yep.
And
I remember
so
those
it
days.
was all the time, on and on. And we really didn't have any time. And I was rushing all the time, all the time, all the time. And I wasn't seeing my children. And then on top of that, it was stressful at work for different reasons. Some of them I think you all will get into later. But, and then on top of that, it was also safety issues for my son. He was getting older, and I just knew that whatever I had to do, I was a single mother. I wasn't going to raise my Black son in DC. It was just, and this was before George Floyd. This was just the environment of cities, and where we were with the violent culture and that sort of thing. And then I don't want to dwell on the negative, but that was a big push. I just wanted
And
peace.
that's definitely a part of a lot of people's decisions. I know some people that started making that move when Trump was in office, and now with racial tensions the way that they are now, it's we're continuing to see people just make that decision, which is why I'm having this conversation. It's exactly why I decided to make it an episode for the podcast. So very timely.
Right. And I just wanted peace. I wanted my son to, grow up somewhere where he was just Diallo. That's it. And he could focus on being whomever he was going to become and do it, in the greenery and fresh air and just immersed in an actual culture and history. That's what I wanted. And frankly, that's what I wanted for myself too. I was tired of the city. I wanted quiet. My significant other and I laughed because we both grew up in DC, and I said, I can remember there was a time when I was like, I couldn't imagine not living in the city. People were moving out into, Southern Maryland and that. And I'm like, what are they doing? And, you go through phases of life. And I just, the noise, the crowds, I just didn't want it anymore. And I lived on a busy street. I'm like, I just want quiet. So there were, several reasons, but they all rolled up into quality of life. And that's why I really wanted to be part of this conversation because, you know, we're not rich, you know, we didn't have all this money like to move. It was just a priority for us.
Yeah.
So we planned and made it happen.
And all of you look happy, peaceful, thriving. So what is life like now? And I like this group of women. You know, Ashley is a millennial. She can represent the millennials. Natisha, Black woman, doing all the things.
On the other end of the millennials. I'm on the older millennials.
Yeah. So
early millennials.
So even to hear the difference, you know, that dichotomy between an active social life versus like you were doing, the acupuncture, the spiritual component, all of that. Ayoka, you moving with the family, you know, moving, your man came along, your son is there. Just to hear three different lifestyles, but all experiencing this similar bliss. You know, what is life like? What is community like in and did I mention that Ayoka's in Costa Rica and Ashley's in Puerto Rico? So Playa del Carmen, Costa Rica, Puerto Rico, what is life like for all of you? And what is your sense of community like? Do you have friends? Do you have groups of girlfriends? Do you still have drinks on Friday? What's it like?
Well, I never had drinks on Friday. As a matter of fact, so before I came to Mexico, I lived in Maryland. I'm originally from Chicago, but I moved to Maryland because I thought the winters were a little bit milder. And I lived in Howard County, which is right between DC and Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, my Friday nights, I spent most evenings and weekends working on my business. You know, so I would work during the day and I would be in the house. You know, I may go to an event, maybe.
Okay.
But most of the time I was working. You know, I remember my acupuncturist or my acupuncturist, not my therapist. It was my acupuncturist who said, "What do you do for fun?" I'm like, "What do you mean? This is fun." Right? Like that's what, you know what I mean? Like if I was running a program,
my entire life from this massage.
Listen, I felt like, you know, I had my Massage Envy membership and I was thinking about how I'm gonna be a millionaire in, you know, 5 or 6 years, like build $1 million business. And so coming to Mexico, number one, on unemployment, you know, that first 6 months, my life was very much so going to the pool most days, you know, riding my bike, listening to podcasts, trying to shift my mindset. Then I started working out again. But now, you know, I feel like I have a bit more balance. You know, I work full time. And let me be clear, I actually just got back to Playa del Carmen, right? Like I took 8 months to come back to the States.
Oh, that's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So I kept an apartment here, but I took 8 months and went back to the States.
Okay.
And I realized, I can't live like this. Right. Like here, you know, I close my laptop at 5:00, promptly 5:30 max, you know, and I go out and make sure the sun sees me. You know, I ride my bike, I listen to music. Now there's a pool on the rooftop. So, you know, I take my swimming lessons or I definitely meet with girlfriends more here than I ever did in the States. Because in the States, you know, you have to, especially trying to go into DC, you got to worry about parking. You got to schedule ahead of time. Here, it's like, all right, where we meeting? Like, who's eating? Like, what we eating for dinner? You know, somebody's contacting me, texting me, WhatsApping me for dinner or breakfast plans or, hey, did you see this event? You know, I have a much more balanced life.
And is your sense of community now, and any of you can answer this, is it Black expats? Is it other Black Americans who've moved to the country? Or is it a mix of locals and expats?
It's
Ashley,
a mix.
I see you shaking your head.
I have a mix. We have been coming here, I guess about 4 or 5 years before we moved. So and so we had some Tico friends or Costa Ricanas. And Ticos and Ticas. So we had some. That was mostly what we had. Now since we've moved, I plugged into this group called the Tribe, and the Tribe is Black people who have moved not just from the United States, but throughout the diaspora and have moved to Costa Rica, specifically this side of Costa Rica. So there are a lot of us in that group. Now, some people still go back and forth to their home country, but in that group, there are about 150 people. And that's not including their spouses, their children. So between that and, we talk about finding your tribe. My background was PR, but I've always at heart been a writer. And it's maybe a week after I got here, somebody posted something in the group about a Black writers group. I was like, my people. And so we meet every week. And then, I've become friends with some of them. So outside the meetings, we chat or get together for brunch or whatever. And then when David got here, see, he went back. He didn't come with us. That's my significant other. He didn't come with us. He stayed back to close some things out. Then he came and went back. So now he's here for good. So we're just kind of finding our way, or our feeling our way and getting our groove now, to be able to go out with friends and go to different events, because he and I, we used to, date night was sacred. We used to regularly do date night, and we got out of that with the pandemic. So we're trying to get that back here. And we love music and love to dance. So don't think because we're not millennials that we won't be going out and, but at the same time.
No, that's exactly what I'm asking about. What is life like?
Quiet. We love our quiet, so we can go into town. We purposely didn't buy anything in town. We can go into town when we want to, have some drinks, hear some music, and come back in the quiet. And we have a pool. I could listen.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the cost of living. I wouldn't have been able to have that in DC. I mean, we have a 4-bed, 2-bath house with a pool on almost an acre of land.
Wow.
Hello. So we can stay here and be good, and just chill, turn on our music, make some little drinks or whatever, invite people over, or we can go out. But I think, I like that. I think the ladies will all speak to this. It's like you have more of a balance. You can choose. Sometimes you want to chill where you are, or you can go out. But even if you're working, I'm not working full time, but it's easy to walk away from that. And you don't feel so pressed about getting away from work, because your baseline is different now. Like you're not like this. You're like, okay.
I can say I experienced that in Hawaii. So, it's still a lot of the comforts of home, but definitely a slower lifestyle. And I remember when we went as a family, I guess this was last year, and I said, I was like, what do people do here? What is and they're like, everybody, we own bars. We own, it seems like I didn't meet any people who led this very corporate life, or, were still heavily involved in technology or things like that. It was just very zen. It was more or less beach life for most of them. So
it's a
Puerto Rico, man.
Yeah.
That's how it's with Puerto Rico. To answer your first question, there's a mixture. So I've met other expats here, because Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory, so it has its own government, but they have a partnership with the U.S. government. So it's a different country, but still within the country. So I met other expats here, a lot of African American or of African descent expats too here. Different reasons, military, work, marriage, excursions, things like that. And then also met the locals, the Puerto Rican, the Boricuas, met them and made friends that way too. So it's a nice blend. I have my local friends and then expat friends that I kind of split time between. And then same. So I don't know if it's a Caribbean life or if it's just life outside the States, but everyone's always doing something non-business. Excuse me, dancing, salsa, bachata, all of that. That's every weekend, probably at every bar on weekdays too. Bars are everywhere. It's a bar next to my apartment complex. Bars are everywhere. Coffee is here too, so there's coffee shops everywhere as well. I've actually met a friend at a coffee shop because we were both working remotely. So it's always something to do. And then, of course, tourism, because it's an island. There's still plenty of touristic activities you can still participate in and meet tourists that way too. And so this is always something to do. And like you all were saying, it's easy to close the laptop and go live life, go to the beach.
Yeah.
Someone's probably calling or texting right now. You're going to do something, you're going to go out, eat, something like that. And I'm usually saying no because I work for a U.S. based company. And here really grasp that you have to kind of work or working overtime. That's not really a thing. I've never heard anyone from here saying they have to work overtime for anything. And so that's something to get used to. So this is the life I try to get away from. I find myself freelancing for corporate America still. So, but in the
life works.
balance is living here.
But still, being able to freelance, being able to work from anywhere, that was what made it possible for you to even make that move, because you moved there still being able to hold on to your U.S. job, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes and no. So they let me work for them remotely part-time. They were like, okay, we're going to let you do it, but part-time. And so that actually helped, that encouraged me to step out of my comfort zone and meet people and network. And I actually met people on the island that I was freelance for too.
Okay.
And so that was how I got the other half of the income coming in, and then on from there.
Okay. All right. So listen, I want to go through this list because you all have mentioned actually something that I hadn't even considered, which is, while we're talking about expats, it's not just Black Americans relocating to where you are, it's Blacks from other countries as well. So it's really representative of the African diaspora, because I mean, it's a melting pot of culture now in all of these places, it seems like. So I want to go through this list, the list that I mentioned earlier from blacknoir.com, the top 10 places for Black Americans to move abroad. So maybe some of these people are represented in the melting pot that is, your friends and neighbors now. But tell me what you think of this list. I don't know. I think that it's in ranking order. So I'll start. Number one, they have is Medellin, Colombia. Yeah. So let's see. Colombia, they boast affordability and an active nightlife scene. So that seems to be the draw there. Number two, Lisbon, Portugal. And they say that Portugal is rich in diversity and culture and has affordable healthcare. And you know what? That's the only country that mentions the healthcare. So I want to circle back to that. Let's make sure we talk about that in a bit. Don't let me forget. Number three, Belize City, Belize. Natisha, you mentioned Belize earlier. Let's say they say there's lots of Black history and culture there. It also has the highest population of people of African descent than any other Central American nation. And that kind of supports what I was saying earlier about the that Yucatan Peninsula, that it's already a very touristy area. It already draws a lot of Black Americans. And so, we go where we know, or where we see other people already. And so that's what this has given me. That
and the slave ships didn't just stop in the Caribbean and Brazil. They dropped people off all up and through Central and South America. So I don't know, and I know the Afro-Mexican population actually just started being counted on the census. So I don't know if I don't know that about those numbers. That's interesting because I do know the Garifuna population in Belize is pretty large. But there's Afro people in
everywhere,
Colombia, Honduras, like everywhere.
I do want to say really quickly that in all African peoples were not enslaved.
Correct.
There are a lot of people that escaped, found a way to escape, and so they were never and were able to flee. I remember someone was telling me recently that a reason why a lot of people ended up in Central America, African peoples, is because they were able to if they were able to get away, they knew how to hull out a trunk, and they got into, they made a boat, and the current just took them, because I mean, it didn't have sails or anything, and so a lot of people ended up in this area.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that.
Okay.
That is true. That is, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that is often a misconception. That
All right. Well, thanks for sharing that. And actually,
you
look,
going with your list.
we're going somewhere else in this conversation, so I'll rein it back in. But there's a population of Black Filipinos that they have not been able to explain how they arrived and how they got there. And so stories like that, like what you just shared, maybe give us some insight into just arriving and how they may have arrived. All right, so number 4, Dakar, Senegal. Senegal. And that's drawing people because the singer and music producer Akon is building this futuristic city there. He's, creating a Wakanda of sorts. Number 5, Limon, Costa Rica. A third of the population there identifies as Afro-Costa Rican. And so there's lots of Afro-Caribbean culture. You said, Ayoka, that's about 30 minutes from you, Limon?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. And I would say that number is low. A third of
it's even more.
Yeah, that's low. Because it's not just in Limon, it's down this whole Caribbean coast. There's a lot of Afro Ticos or Afro Carabeños. So and then there's some people who they just identify as Tico or Tica because their families have been here for 4 generations, 5 generations. If you look at them, they to our eyes, to our American eyes, they look Black, but if they did a census, it would be, they would check Costa Rican. You know what I mean? So because someone doesn't identify, that's a very American lens to look through.
More of a national identity than racial identity.
Right. It's not. They don't identify racially. I guess that's the best way to say it. Here is they're Costa Rican.
Okay, where did I leave off? Number 6, Accra, Ghana. There are about 3,000 African Americans living in Accra right now, and I'm sure that number has changed. Lots of celebrities have been talking about relocating there. Dave Chappelle has mentioned recently. Stevie Wonder has mentioned recently. So there's this resurgence of people making their way back to Ghana, but then they mention Accra specifically. Number 7, Panama City, Panama, says that is most welcoming for Black travelers and very affordable. Bangkok, and Thailand.
That's also half an hour away.
Oh, really? Okay. I did not know that. All right. Bangkok, Thailand, boasts safety for Black Americans. Barcelona, Spain is number 9. Says it has the lowest cost of living in Western Europe. And then combined with a very successful and thriving expat community. I don't really know what that means, a successful and thriving expat community, because that seems to be the case with all of these. And then lastly, Montreal, Canada. And that's ranked as one of the most multicultural countries in the world, has a strong African and Caribbean culture. And with this actually makes sense. has the lifestyle that most closely resembles what we're used to in the United States. So that's what draws them there. What do you guys think about that list?
Yeah, I've met a few. I've met several people who came to Puerto Rico to travel from a few of those places.
Yeah.
Medellin. I actually went to Medellin 2 months ago and met two Black people who are from the states that recently moved there. And too, so definitely have experienced that through meeting other travelers.
Yeah. Yes, this whole culture of global nomads. Y'all just in and out from everywhere.
The challenge with those types of lists that I found for myself is you don't really know, just because the list tells you that there are expats there or there are Black people there, you don't know if they're your kind of Black people until you get there.
Yeah.
Right. Like you don't know if like, are there retirees? Are they digital nomads? Are they people who are just hustling, grinding, trying to, stay abroad? Like backpackers, you know what I mean? Yep. And so I'm so used to hearing Black people are not a monolith. And so those types of lists, like if you try to make decisions based off of those lists, a lot of times you'll find yourself disappointed because it's either not exactly what you're looking for. You didn't know what you were looking for until you got there. Like there's just so many things that you just don't know.
Yeah. So, it sounds like even if this is just the list that you work from, to say, okay, let me check out 3 of them. With all of the groups that exist now on social media, you are bound to find your tribe. Like we were talking about that Blacks in Tulum group on Facebook. That's 14,000 members.
Yeah, but all those people
find a little bit of something.
That's what I'm saying. Like all those people are not in Tulum, right? All those people have been to Tulum. So the resources are there, but I would say hold them lightly. You know what I mean? Like don't try to commit to something based off of what you find online, because what's going to happen, you get to a place and you're going to bump into somebody and they're going to tell you about this other place that's not on the list, and you're going to be faced with this, right? This opportunity, like, do you go and check it out? Or do you try to hold fast to this? No, I got this list. I got to follow my list. What I mean?
And then just do research, like you're saying, do research for yourself for based on what you're looking for. Because I agree, the list, like, unless they put it in, and maybe it is, I haven't seen the list, but unless they give more context to it, it's like, what are the criteria that they were looking at to say, this is a great list if if you're Black and you're thinking about moving abroad.
And it may have something to do with, I'm pulling out some of the highlights, some of the comments that they mention in each description, but it could be based on a number of things. It could be the population, the amount, the percentage of people in these places, that sort of thing. But just hold it. So this is what I want to make sure I get from each of you, though, because you've done it. What do you recommend? What are some tips? What can you give people as starters, as guidelines for navigating this type of move? You've done it. You've got the best and the worst outcomes. What's that?
Do your research. I mean, what is motivating you to look into moving abroad? Like, what is your motivation? What are you looking for? What things are you interested in or passionate about? Make your list and then use your list to start doing the research against countries and see how they stack up on your list. I mean, that's what I did. And that's what I think in our own ways we all did. We decided we were looking for something else that we didn't have where we were. And so now we want to go somewhere that has potential for some of the things on our list, or we know they have it. Because for me, I know one of the things that, and I'm sure would be very important for people looking at this, know about the like IT infrastructure. know about the connectivity, because, in Costa Rica, for instance, it varies depending on where you are.
Okay.
It's still
So
very
for a
like
work
they
from anywhere
have,
kind of situation, that's important.
right.
Yeah.
Right. You need to make sure, some, like my area doesn't have fiber optic yet. They have Wi-Fi. So I have a connection, but I don't have as strong as maybe I will have one day. And those types of things. And you mentioned healthcare. I'll just say this real quick.
Yes,
Costa
please.
Rica has excellent healthcare, and they have national healthcare. And so, I think a lot of
You
times,
qualify already?
and I'm not going to get into politics, but
And you qualify for the healthcare
have
already?
this.
Do you qualify
Yes,
for the healthcare already?
I can go. Yes, I can go. I'm going to pay differently than once I have my residency. It'll be cheaper. But right now, the healthcare quality is so high that I want to go, and just as importantly, I can pay out of pocket. Yeah. Like my son had to go to the dentist because he had something going on and he had to get teeth pulled. He got 2 teeth pulled, and it was the equivalent of $80.
Okay.
Hello?
Yeah.
$80.
That's about the cost of a
cleaning here. Right. I just get cleanings, and that's with insurance a lot of times. I just get cleanings, and my cleaning is like $25.
Oh, no. 75 to 80 with the x-ray and the fluoride treatment. And that's just the copay.
And I'm getting an x-ray and fluoride treatment for my $25.
Yeah.
So it can be figured out if you want to figure it out.
And what's the healthcare like for both of you in Playa del Carmen and in Puerto Rico?
So for Puerto Rico, it is, it's because it's still U.S. territory. Everything is U.S. dollars here and everything. But it's affordable for someone who's from the States because we're used to those prices.
Yeah.
But since the income here on the island is extremely low, almost basically poverty, that the healthcare here is expensive for people who are from here. But my pocket for my healthcare insurance, it's $135 a month, and that's pretty cheap, for the States. But here, it's too expensive for many families. So we face the same situation, just based on their income. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, the healthcare is affordable here. But, to be completely honest, you heard me say I studied herbalism and acupuncture. So, that's how I heal everything with herbs, acupuncture, and massages. So, I can't, I have a friend who wanted to go to an English-speaking hospital. And I do know that, when you go to places where they speak English and they serve primarily tourists, then it's a lot more expensive than if you can speak Spanish, or if you know someone who speaks Spanish, who can go with you. To your question about the one thing that I would recommend,
lessons learned.
Yeah, the one thing that I feel like living in America, living in the US, there's this expectation for perfection that I think really damages our ability to experience, have an amazing experience, because we're expecting perfection. And so I agree, yes, do some research, but the biggest part of your research needs to be putting your body in the space and seeing if this is a place that you want to come back to.
Yeah.
That I think after being here for 4 years, that's actually one of the reasons I started renting out my apartment for a week at a time, because I realized people were doing all this research online, but if you don't come and actually live the way that I live, right? Amazing. So I'll set up, the food delivery that I use, the juice delivery. I have the massage therapist come to the house for you, like the Spanish teacher I use. Like, if you're not living the way that I live,
Yeah.
When you come here, you're not actually having the experience you're going to have.
Right. You're still getting a tourist experience.
Exactly. So as
Mhm.
much as possible, try to come to the place, visit the place, right? Try not to do the all or nothing thing, which I think is typically what we do. It's like, well, I'm gonna throw cares to the wind and now I'm packing and moving.
Yeah.
No, come visit. Use
Yeah.
some of those vacation days, especially, if you can work remote, like come and visit and see what it feels like to be here and to
Yeah.
actually live here.
And I heard that was consistent with each of you. Each of
Mm.
you made multiple trips there before.
I didn't, but
Well,
I got a little different story.
but that's your lesson learned, right?
But to
right.
that's so true. Just sorry, really quickly. That's so true here in Puerto Rico too. People who have stayed the longest and actually were able to enjoy. I mean, wasn't to enjoy about the island, but to enjoy lifestyle outside of the States are those who embraced it, because there are still people, and I've met other people from the States here who can't stand living here because, oh my gosh, no one wants to speak in English. I'm like, well, it's not.
Right.
It's no one is or it's disorganization, and I wouldn't say disorganized, but because we are so to the T in the States, everything outside of this kind of feels
a different orientation.
What are they to the T in the States?
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like, all right, ma'am, sir, how long you stay in that line for DMV? How often you complain about how rules apply to some folk and don't apply to other folk? Come on. Like,
Right.
This is a great conversation, and I want to be able to refer my students to this conversation too, because this is what I have them do. So you all are living it. I know all of this theoretically. I teach, cross-cultural communication, intercultural communication, and the projects that I have my students do is to do country profiles. And so at the end of that semester, at the end of that class, they've gotten 25 to 40 different profiles of countries. And so I'm having each one of them study comportment in the streets. How do I conduct myself in education? I'm having them study it for education, for healthcare, for business, the different things, the different reasons they would travel there. Is there a particular etiquette? Is there a way to conduct business where we have to form relationships first before we get to the business? Are there different orientations to time? That's what made me think of this. Different orientations to time where, here in the States, we say that we have a monochronic orientation to time. We expect things to happen one after the other at a specified time. If we go to the computer lab and it says it's open from 9 to 5, our expectation is that it's open from 9 to 5. But for students going to study abroad, they could go to that lab several times and that lab's not open today. So those types of expectations, I have each of them immerse themselves in the country and then do a cohesive presentation so that by the end of that class, everyone has been exposed to at least 25 to 40 countries. And it's all theoretical, but that's what you have. It's better than getting off the plane, arriving and thinking you can take off your tank top and dance in the street and get arrested. Those sorts of things. So this will be a great conversation then to add to our conversation. So thank you for these perspectives. Mm-hmm. And before I let you go, so Ashley, did you also have another tip that you wanted to share? And then I want you all to, if you're willing, put your LinkedIn profile, give us your LinkedIn profile or Instagram profile if people want to watch your lives, see how you're living life in Puerto Rico and Costa Rica and Mexico.
Yeah, I would say my last tip, well, my tip would be just to extend grace because you don't really realize that as Americans, we have so much privilege until we leave our world and go outside of that. And people just never really experienced life like we did. And so there aren't as many, and we kind of touched base on this, but some people who are arriving late to us, that's their normal time for them. Or, people here actually smile and say hello and want to hug you and they kiss on the cheek and stuff like that. from the States, like, who are you touching? What are you, and easily get offended and things like that. And just realizing that if you're moving to a different country, it's different.
Yeah.
It's not, there might be some similarities, and that's because of pop culture, because of television and social media, but there's still a lot of things to learn from them, and to step outside of your comfort zone. And so you're going to mess up. You're going to mess up in the language. You're going to mess up in, just the cultural norms.
Mm-hmm.
That
nonverbal communication. Like you were saying. Mm-hmm.
Immigrants in the States who most Americans aren't too kind towards for doing that. And so you will experience that outside of the States, and then just understanding the different dynamic.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So any Instagram handles or LinkedIn profiles you're willing to share?
Sure. So I'm putting mine in the table. Mine is at Ashley __ Amor, AMOR. That's love in Spanish. So.
Okay. And that's where did you say that was?
Instagram. Sorry.
Instagram. Okay.
And on Instagram, I'm Coach Tish.
Coach Tish.
Coach Tish. Yeah.
Okay. And Ayoka?
I'm Joy in Home. LinkedIn, I don't post anything about really my day-to-day here or anything like that.
Okay.
But I will. But actually, after this conversation, I think I'm going to do a little tips, top 10 tips or something if you're considering relocating. Because I think people need to know.
Yeah.
Put your Americanism in your pocket.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Two great thoughts to close on. So thank you, ladies, for joining the conversation and lending your commentary and experiences. So I'm going to set you backstage and continue the conversation with Natisha.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Natisha. So I want to make sure that we close out with the coaching component.
Yeah.
Because I know this is getting into gear, and I want to make sure you get to tell us about that. So
absolutely,
let's pick up there.
Okay. So as I mentioned, I realized after being here for 4 years that I learned a lot about change. I learned a lot about adapting to change. I learned a lot about myself, and how I was able to grow both in my leadership, but also in my ability to what I call work well. Right. And I noticed the stark difference in how I worked when I was here as opposed to how I worked back when I was in the States.
Yeah.
That I just didn't recognize it until I went back to the States, and I just realized, I don't like the way I work. I don't like the way I exist. I don't like the way I live.
Yeah. Reverse culture shock.
Well, and it wasn't, it's funny because when we think about culture shock, we're really thinking about the external. For me, it was internal. I was in Costa, and I just noticed that I just lived and I existed in the world differently. And so, coming back, when I came back and my intention was not to move back, I was actually thinking I wanted to go explore, backpack around Mexico. Not really, but I couldn't. I was like something between backpacking and like living a place. Cause I, like I said, I came here sight unseen. And so I decided, I came and looked at a beautiful apartment where I am now. And I decided that I wanted to share this experience and all the resources I'd gathered and everything that I'd learned with other people who wanted to feel or experiment with what it felt like to live like an expat. Being in Playa del Carmen for all the reasons I mentioned, right? It's a tourist town. So if you want to practice your Spanish, you can. If you want to speak English, you can. It's, all major cities have a flight to Cancun almost every day. And Cancun is like a 45-minute ride away. So you can get back to the States, if you needed to. But there's like this, I think this is just the perfect place for experimenting with what it feels like to live abroad and just testing it out. And so I decided I would, for 1 week at a time, like I would share my space and share all my resources and really support people in what I like to call, like I said, working well, leading well, and being well, and thriving as the best version of themselves.
I love that. How do they take advantage of that? How do they connect with you and get that coordinated?
They can reach out to me. What I would, if you reach out to me on either Instagram or LinkedIn and just let me know that you're interested, and I can get you all the information from there.
Okay. And before we go, just, I know that you're working in diversity, equity, and inclusion.
I am.
And how has this shaped, because it's been more or less since you've been living in Mexico that you started working in DEI.
Yeah.
So how did that shape or reshape the way that you work?
The interesting part, I've always been Black. Right.
Really?
But I don't think I necessarily thought about it as part of my identity and what that meant. I started working in DEI as in a full-time role in 2020, toward the end of 2020. I joined our diversity committee in April of 2020. And what I realized, I think in earlier part of the year, working in DEI, like this was a different language, right? Like I was learning terms like intersectionality that I really had glossed over before, and things that I just hadn't thought of. And so I think being in a different country, when you start to see your own privilege, for example, thinking about privilege. I never thought about privilege before being a Black woman in America. But even as a Black woman in America, there's still a measure of privilege that I held, right? I've gone to college. I make more money than my parents have ever made, even when I was living in the States. So, but I never considered that privilege, right? I never considered, because every time I went to go home and visit my family, I was still going back to the hood. But the fact that I was going back and I wasn't necessarily living there, it began to, I think, really wake me up to things that I had ignored before, because working in DEI, you work with all types of people, and in particular, working in corporate DEI and working in tech DEI, right? We're talking to people about their privilege, and being able to come from a space where I didn't recognize that I had privilege, and now I am very clear about most of the privilege that I hold. It gave me, I think, a different perspective than some of my counterparts.
Yeah. I wish that I had the practical experience, what you all have, actually living abroad, instead of it being just theory based. So I know, I've studied countries inside and out. I've studied managerial styles. I've studied communication styles, what I was talking about earlier, the preferences to orientation, time orientations, and how that impacts the way that we do work, deliverables, an expectation that that something is to be delivered on a specific day and time versus this is done when people are happy. This is done when the team is cohesive and we all get along, just different standards for what success looks like. And, but again, what I don't have is the practical, how does this really look as part of the team? And so the way that I apply it, and I apply it as a DEI professional now, I never called myself a DEI professional until about 1.5 years ago. I did cross-cultural considerations in management. I did those types of workshop sessions for corporations. I did effective leadership, and it was rooted in culture and cross-cultural communication. I walked through the protected classes and what's inherent in cultural differences in those protected classes and taught that to managers. It was always alongside their DEI efforts. You know, human resources is bringing me in to support this diversity initiative, but I didn't consider myself a diversity professional or a DEI professional. It was human resources. It was leadership training, professional development for managers, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But it's all really rooted in these cross-cultural considerations. So, you know, like I'm enjoying this conversation in a very different way. I'm certainly not packing up. I mean, I guess I can never say never, but I'm probably not packing up my family like y'all and moving to another country, but I'm going to enjoy these vacations. And I do feel more informed because of it, because I do the work, because I prepare and I study, you know, culture and communication styles and all those things. But, you know, it's just enlightening to hear your perspective actually living in it. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing these experiences. So where can people find you? You've already mentioned being able to connect with you on LinkedIn and Instagram for renting out the space. But is there any specific projects related to the coaching or any, you know, cohorts or one-on-one coaching that you want to?
For sure. My website is natishawillis.com. And I'm actually working on a guide. I've interviewed about 15 to 20 people who live here in Playa del Carmen. Okay. Right. So from unemployed to entrepreneur to retired, and really getting a feel for what they wish they'd known before they come here. And so I'm building that out now as we speak. And so if you go to natishawillis.com, you can actually find the link to get that guide, and that'll be completely free.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you get back to that life, that lush life. I use lush differently because I'm talking about the greenery and the zen, you know, not the beverages. Although, you know, you don't mind indulging in that either.
Of course.
Thank you so much for a great conversation.
Thank you.
And we will chat soon.
All right.
Bye-bye.